Out in the wild edges of old Europe, when the sun fell behind blackened woods and the cold crept in, stories roamed free. Stories of creatures half man, half beast. Creatures that tore through the darkness and through the hearts of men. But what happens when fear turns into law? When superstition wears a judge's robes and the executioner's axe is swung against the human soul? Today, we venture into one of history's most gruesome, eerie, and tragically human sagas, the Werewolf Trials. In an age ruled by famine, plague, and war, Europe wasn't just haunted by disease or poverty. It was haunted by something worse, itself. Before we meet the accused, we need to step into their world. Imagine Europe in the 15th to 17th centuries. Famine was a regular visitor. War was a constant storm. The Black Death had already clawed through millions. The air itself seemed thick with despair. And when people are cornered by fear, they start seeing monsters. In these days, wolves weren't fairy tale creatures. They were real threats. They hunted livestock, wandered into villages, sometimes even attacked children. In a time without electric fences or guns, wolves were living nightmares. When real wolves took your animals, you blamed nature. But when the suffering never stopped, when disease ravaged families, when neighbors turned strange, something darker had to be at work. Thus, the myth of the werewolf, the shapeshifter, the man-beast, grew teeth. Fear isn't harmless. Fear writes laws. Fear holds trials. Fear burns. Starting around the 15th century, Europe saw a panic, not just of witches, but of werewolves. People genuinely believed that men, and sometimes women, were making pacts with dark forces, transforming into wolves, and committing acts so savage that even wolves themselves would turn away. But unlike witch trials, which exploded across Europe, werewolf trials were localized. They mainly happened in forest-heavy places where wolves still prowled, like Germany and France. In places where forests still whispered and wolves still hunted under the moon, the belief that evil could walk on four paws found fertile ground. And this wasn't small either. In Germany alone, historians have tracked about 300 werewolf cases during the early modern period, compared to the 30,000 to 45,000 witch executions. It was a fraction. But every case carried a weight heavy enough to warp reality. No name in werewolf lore is as soaked in blood or as distorted by fear as Peter Stump. On October 31st, 1589, in the small German town of Bedburg, a crowd gathered to watch the execution of a man they believed was no longer human. Peter Stump, a 50-year-old farmer, confessed under torture to unspeakable crimes: murder, cannibalism, even incest. His victims included 16 people. 13 of them were children, his own son among them. According to confessions extracted through medieval torture methods, Stump devoured the boy's brain. He also confessed to consorting with demons. A succubus, disguised as a beautiful woman, was said to be his lover. His own daughter, too, was dragged into his crimes. His execution matched the horror of his supposed crimes. Strapped to a wheel, flayed alive, his bones broken with a blunt axe, decapitated. Then his corpse burned at the stake. As a warning to others, his severed head was impaled on a tall post in the center of Bedburg. But here's the catch. No court transcripts. No solid trial records. Our only source is a sensationalist English pamphlet from 1590, supposedly a translation from German, but the original German document, lost. Was Stump a real werewolf? Or just a broken man tortured into confession? The truth is, we may never know. Peter Stump was not an isolated incident. The woods hid more accusations. In places where wolves haunted the dark edges of civilization, rumors followed. In France, the infamous beast of Gévaudan attacks in the 18th century fed werewolf hysteria. Entire villages believed they were under siege by supernatural creatures. Accusations usually targeted shepherds and herders, people who lived on the fringes, people who spent their days and nights among the animals. Brian Levac, a historian at the University of Texas at Austin, pointed out something fascinating. Whereas female witches were accused of curses and potions, male witches, or werewolves, often had instruments to perform magic. In medieval thought, transformation wasn't random. It had structure, method, and law behind it. Even in evil, there was an order. If witches could curse, why accuse someone of becoming a wolf? Because wolves embodied the purest fear of the time. Violence, hunger, untamed rage. Witches represented secret power. Werewolves represented brute force. Where witches poisoned crops, werewolves tore out throats. Where witches whispered curses, werewolves ripped open bellies. It's no coincidence that werewolves were mostly men. Wolves were seen as strong, aggressive, territorial, qualities that society, for better or worse, often pinned on men. And in a world teetering on the edge of survival, anyone who seemed too wild, too strange, too distant from the village center became a suspect. The werewolf wasn't just outside the village. It lived inside the mind. Psychologists have since coined terms like clinical lycanthropy, a rare mental disorder where a person believes they are transforming into a wolf. In medieval Europe, no one had that vocabulary. But the fear of losing one's humanity, of becoming a creature ruled only by instinct and hunger, that fear was real. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Battle not with monsters, lest ye become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." The more Europe hunted monsters, the more it became monstrous itself. Like the fog, the panic eventually lifted. By the 18th century, Enlightenment thinkers began challenging superstitions. Courts slowly stopped entertaining accusations of sorcery and shape-shifting. Real wolves were still hunted, but imagined ones? They lost their legal teeth. The last known werewolf trials faded away into history, but not into nothingness. The stories remained. They survive in our books, our movies, our nightmares. Because even today, we wonder, could the wolf still be hiding? Not in the woods, but in ourselves. Fear wears many faces, sometimes human, sometimes wolf, sometimes something worse. Until next time, keep questioning, keep searching beyond the structure of what you know.